Hi everyone, I'm Tim Von Rieden here at cgcookie.com, and welcome to part 4 of our character series, in which I will take you through rendering the clothes and the skin of our character. And I'm going to pick up where we left off in the last one, where I did the hair and the face of the character, and I'm going to be applying those same techniques to the different areas in this tutorial. The main difference is that I'm going to still be using that same circle hard edge brush throughout most of the tutorial, but near the end I'm going to be using a custom skin brush I created to add a little more texture to it, and I'm going to drop that in the download source files as well. So with that, let's get started. So just like I did with the hair and the skin tutorial, I'm going to be continually saving out the collapsed version of the different steps that I'm taking along the way. So you can see I'm working on one layer, and then usually I'll create a new layer, I'll work on top of that layer, and if I like it enough, I'll merge it down, and then I'll make a copy of it to continue on. And as you can see here, I'm starting off by just color picking and drawing right over the line art. And as I said in the first tutorial of the series, is that I like to use my line art as just a fundamental foundation for me to color on top of. So here I am just, color picking my colors and drawing right on top of everything, and I'm keeping that light source in mind. And that's really important for when I'm coloring something, because that will define where I'm putting all my highlights, where I'm shading in and out. And as you can see, I'm trying not to zoom in too much, because even at this stage, I don't want to over detail something or zoom in and focus too hard on a particular area. So I like to keep it zoomed out and then work from there. And the reason I keep reiterating how important lighting is because, for example, her arm on the other end, where that cast shadow would be from her body, it'll really define her in like a 3D perspective if you really pay attention to where you're dropping that cast shadow from her body onto her arm. So I'm trying to focus on that as well. So that's something I'm always thinking about, is how is this light hitting this particular area of either the shirt, the skin, her pants, whatever it may be. And I want to make sure that I'm reflecting it correctly. So the surface of a material is really important for working with the skin and clothing of a character. So your skin, depending if it's a hotter day and you want to emphasize that maybe she might be sweating a little bit, or her skin might have a little bit of a moist look to it, then I might make it appear a little more shiny with highlights. But since skin absorbs most light, it won't reflect as much. I'll usually keep it pretty neutral. And then for clothing, it's very neutral based. It doesn't reflect as much, and then you might see highlights in different areas. But really, I would keep it very neutral based and save the highlights for areas that really need it, like metals or reflective surfaces. Those are the things that you really want to make sure you're reflecting light back. So then here, I'm just going in and I'm doing some detailing work. So once I feel I laid a good base for me to work on top of, then I'll go in with a smaller brush and work on top of that. And then here you see I made a decision where I didn't like the seam going down the side, so all I do is I just cover it up and keep going. I try not to over focus on an area, and I think that's really important for you to keep in mind as you're doing your work as well, because I know in the past I've been stuck in like hours focusing on one particular area, and it's not worth it. I promise you it's not worth it. So here you can see I'm just going around, and I did use a multiply layer, and I masked out the character, and I quickly just edged it out to bring out more values and really make her pop out as a 3D object. And then I'm going to go in, I'm going to start detailing the hands. And for the hand that she has up in the air right now, I at first liked it, but this is a good example where if I don't really feel the hand as I keep working on it, I can just quickly erase it and try doing a new one. Because if I'm not feeling good about it from the start, why try to polish and render something that you're not digging? So that's why, as you can see, I keep trying to avoid it. Like I go back to the other hand, I try not to think about it, and then sooner or later I'm going to start erasing. And there we go. And then I'm just going to try different hand gestures and different motions and see if I like a particular one. So this was a good thing for me to keep in here, because it's another good reminder that you can change your either concept or different poses or motions, gestures that your character is doing. And you want to be, aware that you can do that. It's not solid, set in stone once you have a line art, laid out for you. And just like I did with the hair and the face, I'm going to go back and forth between the shirt and the pants to, match that level of detail that I have going on. So I reached a point in the shirt where I felt I needed to bring that level of detail down to the pants, so that's what I'm doing. And this goes back to the whole point of I'm trying not to over focus on an area. Like now I could easily go in and keep detailing that shirt and almost make it to the point of complete. But I really want to make sure that I'm treating this as a whole piece. I'm thinking about the entirety of the character, and I want to make sure I finish, as I go. I don't want it to just be steps where I'm zooming in, okay, I'm going to do the shoes now, and I work only on the shoes for like an hour, then I finish it, and then I move up to the next area. I want to continually be working throughout the piece. And here I'm just using more darks to kind of fill out the wrinkles in my clothing. And this is a great example where, reference is a great tool for you to use, especially if you're not that great with folds and wrinkles and knowing how different clothing folds. This is something that you can easily look up on a search engine really quick and use it as a reference. Or even if you have clothing that's similar to it, you could just take photo references of yourself wearing the clothing in the same pose. That way you're even getting a more accurate depiction of what the clothing would do. So in here, I like to make clothing darker, and then I work my lights on top of it. So the pants are a great example where I'll make them darker, especially in the folds. I'll make them almost black. And then I'll use my lighter colors to really pop out the values in my where the light's hitting. You can see even as I'm working with the folds of the clothing, I'm still trying to zoom out and not focus too much in one particular area. So then even sometimes I'll pull back to this extreme where I'm just laying down lights based on the composition of the character, and then I'll zoom in from there. And currently I'm using the flattened version of the circle hearted brush, and that's something you can change really quickly in the brush settings menu. And you can see that when I'm working with building up my values, I'm not using white as my light color. I'm using brown that's lighter, but also has a little bit of a yellow tint to it, and that's because it brings a warmth to the color. And especially since I see this character maybe setting outside or somewhere where the sun would be hitting, I'm going to bring in some of those warmer colors to really affect the lighting that I'm choosing for my character. So it's something I recommend is only use whites for like highlights or areas that you really want to showcase that the surface is reflecting the light directly. And it's really easy to add things like accessories to the character, but I'm going to save that more for the next section of the video. But you can see I can just quickly square out a box in like a dark brown, and then I can work up the different values from that. And it's really easy to add accessories to a character once you have the base pretty much set in stone. So in here I'm just going in and I'm really trying to detail out the pants. I feel good about how the wrinkles are placed, so then this is when I'll go in and I'll edge them all out and I'll really try to build a bit up. And the kneecap things that are right above her or right below her knees just kind of happen by accident, and this is probably one of the best things for me is when something accidentally happens that I enjoy and I like and I'll stick with. And it happens all the time if you're keeping loose with the way you're coloring. So I recommend trying not to make it completely look like the line art you have, and you'll surprise yourself by the things that you add. And now here's where I'm masking out the character, and I'm using my skin brush and I'm going around and adding just a little texture detail throughout. And normally I like to do it on a multiply layer to darken out the textures on it. And then here I'm using liquify to push and pull some areas. And another thing I like to do is I like to add a quick small stroke of color here and there, like on the shoes especially, to round out the object even more. And here I thought the skin looked a little too artificial for me, a little too plastic. So what I did is I masked out the character and I added more brown hues into the skin. And that way it grounded it off more in a more natural based skin color. And here, this is a multiply layer that I masked out the character in. And I'm going in and I'm really trying to bring out the values in the character and round her out as much as I can using the skin brush as my tool. And then from here, I'll go in and I'll add that shadow everywhere. So under her arm, on the other side of her face, on her hair, things that really indicate where that light source is coming from. And then I'll just lay it on where the cast shadow would be. And there we have it. This is a place where I would call it done and I would move on to adding the accessories. So the main tips I want you to remember as you're doing the skin and clothing of your character is to try to stay zoomed out, because if you zoom in too soon, you'll be over-rendering a particular area of your character when you should be rendering it as a whole. And it'll just save you time and your workflow will move much faster. The second thing is to always remember where your light source is coming from and lay down your colors accordingly. And this will really bring out your character in a three-dimensional sense, and it'll build the values almost immediately. And I like to build my lighting through warmer colors, and I only use white where the surface is highly reflective. And lastly, try to have fun with your color placement, but also keep your brush strokes in the movement of your piece. Don't try to stick strictly to your liner, because you never know what might materialize that you'll enjoy better than what you had before. So thanks for watching, and in the next part I'm going to go through adding some accessories.